Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Keith Fleming. This is the Daily Fix Show. Not that Daily Fix Show, but this Daily Fix Show on the Fantasy and Friends Podcast Network. With me, as always, my man, the legend, Joe the Brain Mats. What's going on, Joe?
I think like the entire football world, just relieved that DeMar Hamlin is alive and seemingly pretty well. So that's awesome considering where we all were Monday night.
That was just terrifying. I think everybody should be applauded for the way they handled it. But for DFS guys like ourselves, which that's what we're here today, it was a weird week because you didn't know who was going to play, how the Bengals Bills game was going to be handled, what were the tie scenarios. So normally we go on Thursday nights. Obviously, we wish could have gone then. We're going tonight, and I'm kind of glad to have gotten that extra day of information because a lot came out today.
It definitely helped to know exactly what the Bengals situation was, as we'll see with our picks, because if they hadn't made any changes at all and they just said the game is void, we're going off win percentage, then the Bengals would have nothing to play for this weekend. And so, yeah, we'll that changed some things for us. Although, yeah, it's a fluid situation. So, yeah, we're glad to have that extra day. And hopefully it's all football from here. No more, nothing like that. Hopefully,
no, for sure.
Ever again.
You would say, though, for this week, it's almost like week one all over again, that you're not sure what is going to happen in any of these games. And if you have hunches, it's okay to take them. Like, this is the time to take those hunches, take those chances. Why not? But I was looking for players and games that I kind of think I have a really good idea who's going to play and how hard, etc.
Right. Because, yeah, for some of these games, it's almost like one team will be treating it like preseason.
Right.
Maybe they'll give the starters
like football giants.
Yeah, so it's like, we don't want the full week off. We want everybody sharp next week. So maybe they'll play a series or two, and then it's the backup. So, yeah, that's definitely something. Make sure you're up to date when you're selecting these games on who's playing and who's not. Even more than normal, because that's always something we stress. But, man, this week you got to know, because it's not just is this guy questionable. It's will he play an entire game.
So we will see. Going into week 18, again, I'm not going to pick on anybody for any take or play this week because might as well have some fun. It's the last week of the season before the playoffs start. Let's go to the QBs, Joe. And I'm going to go with Joe Burrow. He's 7,300 versus Baltimore. Now, I mean, since they kind of need to win this game, or some things could happen. They could end up having a coin toss decide who ends up winning. It's kind of a weird situation, but Burrow's been great versus Baltimore, 28 points per game in his last three versus them. He scored 9 touchdowns with at least 2 in each of those games, those 3 versus Baltimore in the last 2 years. He scored 25 points or more in 4 of the last 6. And again, I just think the Bengals are going to want to win this game, guaranteed that they're going to get at least one home game. And Burrow has been so great about the last 6 weeks that I really think he's going to be able to exploit what has been a good Baltimore defense, but he's just getting rid of the ball so quickly. They're using Higgins, Chase, all those guys. I like Burrow a lot this week. 7,300. He's my expensive tier QB.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. It's Joe Burrow for me. I mean, on that first game against Baltimore when he scored 18, that's, like you said, based on compared to what he did last year against them, that was kind of like the disappointing game. And then you look at what he's done since then. I mean, he immediately followed that game up with 35 and 42 the following weeks. And yeah, the last 4 weeks, not excluding the Buffalo game, obviously. 25
a little easier at home too, right?
Yeah, 25 or more in 3 of those 4 games. So yeah, I think this coaching staff more than anything has kind of figured some stuff out with what works best for this team. They've gone more shotgun. They've been more aggressive passing on early downs.
Put the ball in Joe Burrow's hand.
Yeah, they've done what they should do. So this was a coaching staff that I was not afraid to shit on the last, even when they were like
so, Joe.
Super Bowl, it was kind of like, guys, you could be doing even better. And now it looks like maybe they figured it out. So I'm 100% with you. Joe Burrow, he's awesome. Probably the runner-up for MVP right now. And yeah, this is a game that they have to have. So Yeah, that's what we look for this week is either a plus matchup, which arguably this is, even though this is a good defense. And then, just an elite player who's motivated to win.
I completely agree. The only guy I would be wanting more than Burrow is playing Saturday, and that's Patrick Mahomes, who we talked about earlier. That would be the number one guy in my MVP, but that's okay.
I am a little upset that we don't get those Saturday games because I think those are two of the best games because, I mean, the Raiders showed some life against the Niners defense. So, man, if you get those guys going against Kansas City, you get Kansas City against the Raiders defense, and then I would be loading up with Jaguars if I was playing a Saturday one too. Because
just remember though, Joe, I've told you, you end up loading up. It always happens when I do the Thursday through Monday games.
You overdo it.
I'm like, because I just want some action, and sometimes that's not the best decision. Or at least you're not in the best mind to make the best decision. So my median tier is Geno Smith, $6,000 at LA, friend of the pod, especially for Joe. Did you co-sign this one?
I did co-sign this one.
Okay, thank God. Go ahead, because he's been your boy all year. Go ahead.
I mean, he's honestly been a little disappointing down the stretch here. The last 3 weeks, he's averaging just north of 15 points per game. Think
about that, though, if you just said that preseason.
Right. I mean, it's like disappointing that he's thrown only 4 touchdowns the last 3 weeks. I mean, part of that is a little fluky. He lost 2 fumbles across those 3 games.
Didn't have Lockett for part of them.
So you're not always going to see that happen. Yeah, we missed Tyler Lockett, who really has been the number 1 receiver in that offense this year. Also, one of those games was against the Niners, who, despite what Jared Stidham did last week, have generally been the best defense in the NFL. Also, the Jets have been very good. So the Kansas City one, if people listen to the pod, they know that one surprised us that it was such a rough game.
Whoops.
But yeah, this is Geno, I mean, playing to keep Seattle alive because they're very much still in the playoff hunt if they win this game. Again, we want teams that have motivation to win. We want players in those situations. Because unlike, say, Doug Peterson's Eagles, when they sabotaged my Giants on the Sunday night game a couple of years ago, Matt Campbell's Lions are not going to roll over, even if they don't have a shot. So yeah, Geno, Seahawks, they have to feel confident that they have at least like roughly a 50-50 shot if they win this game to make the playoffs. So they're motivated. It's a Rams team that's been all over the place with what you're getting from them, whether it's
the defending champs. Feels really, like a lifetime ago.
Yeah. It was funny because I know I was watching the games last week and they're like the defending champs. And it was like,
who?
This doesn't ring the same as like last year with Tampa Bay, where it's like, yeah, they are the defending champs. It's Tom Brady. It's this Rams team, not quite there. Justin Herbert had a very efficient game against them last week. They did a little bit better the few previous weeks, but again, one of those games against the Broncos, which barely counts as an NFL offense. The Packers, not the best game for Aaron Rodgers, but he's been banged up this whole season, hasn't looked quite right. So I don't think this is a defense you need to be afraid of. To that point, Geno, 27.98 points against them, week 13. That is his second best game of the year. So this is a defense that he feels like he knows how to attack. They have to get the win. He's not even just playing like keep the playoff hopes alive. He's playing, will I be the quarterback on this team next year? Because people shouldn't forget they have that Broncos pick. If they want to move on, they want to get CJ Stroud in there, they probably can do it. So a lot riding on Geno, and hey, I'll bet on him one more time.
I love that. And I would too. He's a gamer, man. He has been his entire career, some bad luck, some bad decisions. He could be more. Multiple passing touchdowns, 8 of his last 10. Even with the slump you're talking about, still 8 of the last 10 games, he has multiple pass touchdowns. And, the Rams give up rushing yards. I mean, Mariota, Jimmy G, Dalton all threw 2 touchdowns versus this team. You can score on them. And I'm with you. Geno's playing for everything. All right, bargain.
Well, real quick, actually, because you made it click in my mind about him being a gamer that don't forget, this is a guy who beat up on the teams that let him go this year.
That's right.
So the fact that he was able to get a bunch of different revenge games this season, that's to me, that's a good sign that this guy knows how to step up and get again 3-0 against the teams that he used to play for this season. So when it's on the line, bet on Geno.
He's the one that deserves the commercials, not Baker Mayfield. I mean,
I mean, at this point, yeah.
All right, my bargain tier, and I know I'm not happy about this either, guys. But it's week 18. Give me Joe Flacco, 4,800 at Miami. He's averaging 19.8 points per game in his 3 starts this year, thrown for 300 yards in 2 of those 3 games. The least amount he had in any of them was 285. Dolphins are 31st in points allowed to quarterbacks on DK. They've allowed 200-plus yards and 2 scores to Mac Jones and Brock Purdy in his first action ever. That was the game that Jimmy G got hurt in, and a 7th-rounder who started here as the 3rd string threw for multiple touchdowns and over 200 yards on this D. I think you can throw on Miami, and we'll get to it when we get to Garrett Wilson later, but Flacco has actually unleashed the best receiver on this team. In a good matchup, I think they're going to be throwing a lot. Give me Joe Flacco, 4,800 bargain tier QB.
Yeah, I like that one. As we'll see.
You don't love it.
I mean,
you never love when Joe Flacco.
Listen, yeah, it's impossible to love that. I do like. I'm gonna have some Jets down the pike here, so obviously I think there's the potential there. Range that I considered because I like some of the players on his team this week was Andy Dalton at 4,800. Until I actually looked at Andy Dalton's success or lack thereof, he is under 15 points in 7 of his last 8 starts. So for that reason, I just decided to play it safe here. 5,700, our guy, Brock Purdy. Again,
this is your and Allen's guy, to be fair, not mine.
I mean, he was not my guy at all. When he first showed up on the field, I was like, "There's no way this works out." Like, sorry, Niners, the Super Bowl is gone yet again. Terrible luck.
It's like, oh wait a minute, maybe just found Brady 3.0.
Yeah, and then he's thrown 2 touchdowns in every single game, 5 straight games, 2 passing touchdowns. Hasn't given us that 300-yard game, which probably isn't too shocking. But over 200 in 4 of the 5 games where he's either started or the Miami game where he played the vast majority of it. Hit at least 15 points every week. He has 1 game over 20. So he's that rock solid 15 points up. You're not going to get a 30-point game out of him. That'd be shocking. But yeah, you can hit 20 for a guy who's 5,700. I don't think anyone's too expensive that you'd tab him with. I guess you could do a McCaffrey one, which would be expensive. And actually kind of saves you in case this just becomes the McCaffrey show. But, I mean, Kittle's got a plus matchup. Ayuk's been really good. Debo is back.
Plus matchup. It's the Cardinals.
I wasn't trying to get to it too early because, yeah, it's as good of a matchup as you can get.
We know. We've said it all year.
Yeah, it's Brock Purdy, full weapons. Cardinals, again, this is another team, even more than the Rams, that's just kind of falling apart here. So, yeah, I just think this is an incredibly high ceiling guy for someone who's under 6,000, like as high of a ceiling as you can basically possibly have. So, yeah, obviously, if you want to roll the dice on Flacco, that saves you an extra 900, and that can go a long way at some of these other positions. But if you want to go cheap but safe, Brock Purdy puts you in that situation.
I like it. I noticed neither one of us went with Desmond Ridder.
Which, I mean, I could see it. Again,
he doesn't have 10 points this year or a passing touchdown. I'm not gonna.
Again, yeah, it's another one of those where it's like, listen, it's not impossible. I mean, we don't expect Tampa Bay to be playing their starters for much of this game.
Facts.
So
we're gonna win. It's the worst thing that can happen.
You are gonna win. Franchise. I'm so sorry for you that you're gonna win.
I told you. We're winning the last 2. All right, running backs. I didn't like any of the expensive guys, so I'm all the way down to Cam Akers, 6,200 at Seattle. Since week 13, he scored double figures in 5 straight games. He's averaged 17.46 points per game in that span, 6 rushing touchdowns, averaging 25 receiving yards his last 3 games, so he's doing a little bit of both in the passing and on the ground. In the first 2 matchups with the Seahawks, the first matchup with the Seahawks, scored 19 points, scored 2 touchdowns. And the Seahawks D has allowed 9 touchdowns to running backs, either on the ground or in the air in their last 6 games. Seattle's run defense is trash. The one thing the Rams are doing right now is they're running it well. Akers looks like he's just wanting to piss off everybody in fantasy who has either drafted him really high watched him done nothing, then dropped him. And then I'm sure he's won a few people championships and picked him up right before the playoffs started. But I'm going Cam Akers, 6,200. That's my expensive tier.
Yeah, I like that one. He was the hopefully he was helpful to some people in their normal fantasy leagues, as opposed to I did pick him up in one league. Granted, of course, I didn't make the playoffs, so it didn't matter. And in another league, I drafted him in the 3rd round, and
you dropped him, right?
Yeah, of course I dropped him.
That's what I'm saying. If you drafted him, you dropped him.
It was awful.
Yeah, it's terrible.
I'm going to stick into that. I'm going to stick with that same game and go Ken Walker, 6,400. Because like you, I couldn't quite go with any of the super expensive guys. Listen, Christian McCaffrey is the top guy for me in fantasy this week, but he costs 9,300. So, hey, if you want to spend the money, spend the money.
Niners get up big. Don't you think that they're going to put him on a snap?
Right. That's kind of my worry with a lot of these higher up guys, because it's like, oh, does Austin Eckler have a good matchup? Yes, because Denver's defense is really good against the pass, not the run. But if they get up, why would you keep Austin Eckler in the game? So yeah, that's what I love about this game. We have one team that's super motivated, one that is just, I don't know, playing it out.
They don't have a draft pick, so fuck it.
Right. They have nothing to gain by losing.
Yeah.
And so there's no reason to go away from Cam Akers. There's no reason to go away from Kenneth Walker, because again, they can still get in. And I mean, Walker, last 2 weeks, 49 carries combined, broke 100 in both games, somehow did not score a touchdown in either game. So that's the sort of thing where if he has another 20 carry, 100-yard game, which would not surprise me at all, I would be surprised if he doesn't finally get a touchdown here. I mean, it's been 4 weeks since he scored a touchdown. So I expect the bounce back in the end zone, 20-plus carries, good chance he gets 100 yards. Again, this is a guy 12th in juke rate, 7th in breakaway run rate. So this is a guy who's always a big play waiting to happen. I will say, don't do a Geno Kenneth Walker split. That's the one thing that I would not recommend. He did have a 4-reception game against San Francisco, but in general, not seeing a ton of action in the passing game. So ride one or the other. Don't do both. But I do think at least one of those guys will be a very good play this week.
What about like a Metcalf or Lockett stack of Walker? You're okay with that, right?
Yeah, I think that makes more sense, just because, could I see one receiver going off in this game along with him? Yes. But I don't know that I see a Geno 250 yards, multiple passing touchdowns, and then Kenneth Walker doing similar. I will say the Rams have generally been stronger against the run, so that would be a point in Geno's direction. But
they did give up, they've been getting torched all year, though.
But the last month, though, has kind of shifted, because they've given up 100-plus yards and a touchdown to opposing backfields in 3 of the last 4 games they've played. And again, the exception was the Broncos.
I was just saying,
they averaged
60 points.
And even that game, the Broncos averaged nearly 5 yards a carry. They didn't keep running because they were getting destroyed. So this is a defense that's kind of slowly, as I think they've just had injuries. They have guys who aren't playing anymore. It's just become easier to run on them as the season's gone along. So again, take your pick, whatever feel. If you're not going Geno for your quarterback, if you're going cheaper, or if you're going with our guy Burrow, then I think Walker's a great play. Because again, I think both of our guys here, these are our expensive guys, and they're in the low 6,000s. So you can pair them with a high-end quarterback or some higher-end guys at wide receiver.
Well, I mean, except for when my median is only $100 less than my expensive tier. But that, again, to your point, you got more wiggle room. Najee Harris versus Cleveland. He's 6,100. He's got 6 of his 9 touchdowns from since week 11. Double figures in his last 7 games. If not for a 9.9 performance in week 10, that stat would be 11 straight double-figure games. So he doesn't really have that breakout 20, 30-point game, right, but he's consistently like that 12 to 20 range, and he's been getting better. He's had 20-plus touches in 5 of his last 8 games, scored 14.1 points versus Cleveland earlier this year. Browns were a better defense, and honestly, the Steelers weren't as good of an offense. Cleveland is 27th on DK and points allowed to running backs. I can't figure out if Cleveland's going to give a shit or not. Like, part of me thinks, yeah, the old rivalry, whatever. But I mean, it's almost like destiny, right? That Tomlin's going to win. I mean, they're going to get a winning record. The streak must live.
Exactly. No, I'm with you. I think they're at least hanging in the game, and I'm not betting against Mike Tomlin to continue this improbable streak when you consider the quarterback play in Pittsburgh the last 4 years.
That's insane.
So I'm with you, and I also appreciate that. What was it? The end of was it a Monday night game that they played against the Ravens? Sunday night game? What was it? Sunday night game, I think. Where at the end he actually just took the microphone away from the reporter just so he could shout out the offensive line one more time.
Yes.
Which, A, I understand it because that offensive line played terrible last year and early this season, and they've been much better down the stretch. And also, B, as a former offensive lineman, I always appreciate when a guy shouts out his guys. So love the Najee Harris play. I will pick on my own team this week, and I'm going to go with Miles Sanders, 5,900. The last 3 weeks, he has only scored 16 total points. But let's not forget the week preceding that 3-week stretch, he played the New York Giants and scored 31.5 points. Not surprisingly. Oh, actually, not his best game of the year. I forgot he torched Jacksonville similarly. But 8.5 yards per carry against the Giants, which not totally shocking. The Giants are 31st in the NFL in yards per carry allowed, only ahead of the Chargers, and 29th in rushing yards allowed at 119. The one worry I have with this game, I'm going to have a few Eagles as we go through this. One worry is the Giants are playing backups. This could get out of hand very early, very easily.
Maybe your backups tackle better than your starters.
That's in the run game. That might be possible.
That's what I'm saying. It's a possibility, Joe.
I mean, there's no difference when it comes to the linebackers because they're terrible. But
I'm just picking on you, man.
So the one worry is, well, how much playing time does Miles Sanders see? I'm not going to pretend that isn't a real worry. I would just say, though, again, a lot of the starters are either not going to play or they're going to be out pretty early. And the Eagles do need to win this game to not only hold on to the 1 seed, but hold on to the division. The Cowboys will be playing at the same time. Unless Washington shocks the world with Sam Howell and they're winning that game, the Eagles are not going to be able to just pull people out until this game is firmly in hand. And again, this is a defense that they're already torching when we were trying with all of our guys. So for as long as Sanders or any of these other starters is in, they should see a lot of success. So at 5,900, I can roll the dice on that.
I think he's underpriced. I like that.
Yeah.
Bargain tier. My boy Tyler Algier. I couldn't not go without a Falcon on this last game, and I wasn't going with Ritter. I don't really like London this week. Pitts is gone, obviously. So let me get Algier. 3 straight games of 15 points or more, at least 17 touches per game in all 3 games. Snap shares rose in each one 48% to 61 to 70. I could even see it higher than that this week, maybe 75, 80. Has been a running back 1 the last 3 weeks, either 1 through 12 in fantasy scoring. And over their last 9 games, the Bucs have allowed 7 backs who had at least 8 carries to average over 5 yards per carry. This is not the old Bucs run defense. You can get out them. Algier seems to, I mean, he runs so hard every play. He's actually the funnest Falcon on a roster right now, which I don't know what you have to say about that when a 4th-round running back is in that situation, but that's okay. But I love Algier this week. I don't think the Bucs really give a shit about this game. I don't believe if they're trying. And again, it is destiny that my Atlanta Falcons are going to do whatever is worst for the fan base and for the organization. So they will win. That means Algier will probably have this great game. I might as well ride him. 5,600. He's my bargain tier running back.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I also have Tyler Algier. On PFF, the O-line, D-line chart in the run game, they have Atlanta with the biggest advantage of the week by a fair margin. So, and that makes sense. This Atlanta offensive line has really been the key to this offense being, despite some iffy at best quarterback play throughout the season, to still being a reasonable offense throughout the year. Adjusted line yards, 4.7 yards. That's 5th best. among offenses. So yeah, this is an offensive line that's paving holes. Tyler Algier has shown he can run through those holes and do some stuff. And yeah, I just don't think we're going to see a whole lot of the Tampa Bay starters, especially down the stretch in this game. So yeah, bargain play of the week, Tyler Algier.
Our boy, let's go Falcons. Lose on Sunday. Come on, for your boy, for your fans. All right, wide receivers. Give me Jamar Chase for expensive tier. Obviously, if I like Joe Burrow, that means I'm going to like Jamar Chase. In his 3 games versus Baltimore, he has at least 10 targets in all 3 of them, 7 receptions or more in all 3 of those games, double figures in every game he's played this season. Chase is the best receiver in football. And early in the season, Burrow honestly was struggling. The offense was really struggling. They weren't doing a good job protecting. They weren't running the best plays. That has really changed. He's had over 100 air yards in his last 6 games. That is a good sign when you have somebody like Jamar Chase running down the field. And the Ravens are worse than their wide receivers than you think. Some of the guys that have big games, Zay Jones, 11 for 145, Mike Evans, 6 for 123. And then the famous Hill Waddle, both getting 11 receptions for over 360 yards versus them early in the season. I think the Bengals are going to roll. I really do. I think they're the better team. And I think they've really learned how to press defense, especially ones that blitz. Burrow's been better against zone this year after last year being better versus man, which is scary for the NFL. So I like Burrow. I like Chase as well. 8,400, my expensive tier wide receiver.
Yeah, I absolutely love this play. There's no receiver, including Justin Jefferson, who is playing an awful Bears defense. That's like all backups at this point. I still kind of like Chase more overall among these high-end guys. I love that pick, but I didn't want us to have all the same picks at wide receiver, although I think we have a different mid-tier. But I'm going to throw in kind of a middle option between our mid-tiers and Chase, and that's Devonta Smith, 7,500 again against my Giants. Over the second half of the season, Giants 8th most points allowed to outside wide receivers. Part of that is Adoree Jackson's been out. There's a possibility he will play this week, but I would expect to see
much, right?
Yeah, if he is on the field, it's 2 series max. I'm not even sure if we're going to play him just because we want to make sure 100% that he will be ready for Minnesota. So, I mean, it's Fabian Moreau who's been shadowing guys and getting torched by guys every single week. Who knows if he'll even play the whole game? And Devonta Smith is going off. He is 3rd among wide receivers in fantasy points since week 13. In DK, that's resulted in 24, 17, 20, 34, and 23 over the last 5 weeks. 4 of those weeks, he has gone over 100 yards receiving, gotten us that bonus. He scored 4 touchdowns. He's had at least 5 receptions and 8 targets in all of those games. Really, literally the only thing I worry about is if A.J. Brown, Goddard, and Sanders score all of the touchdowns and then Devonta's sitting in the 4th quarter because, I mean, that's the only way he's not putting up another big game is if everyone else does it instead and then he's sitting because he is on a roll. This defense is not capable of stopping him, especially when I don't expect the starters to be playing much in the second half. So there is, again, there's a little bit of risk there, but again, number 3 fantasy receiver over the last month plus, and you're getting him at 7,500 with over a half dozen guys more expensive. So yeah, I think there's some really good value there.
Joe, I said all last summer that I love Devonta Smith this year. He's like 5'8", 5'9", 170, and he put up the numbers he did last year as the number 1 receiver in an offense. He really couldn't throw. He's going to be a handful. And it's like, this is only year 2. And I really think the Eagles are just realizing maybe we should be throwing it to him almost as much as we throw it to A.J. Brown because he will go up and make the tough catch.
It's nice to have the choices that they have.
They do. But, I mean, it's crazy that he is the batter of those 2 receivers. Like, the more physical, the more willing to go into contact, to take a big hit.
He's awesome. There's a reason he won the Heisman, man.
You're right.
He's an incredible player.
I love him. DK Metcalf is my median. Speaking of big dudes, 6,700 at the Rams. That's at home versus the Rams. Before last week's stinker, and it was a stinker. I know because I was on Metcalf too. 5 or more receptions in the 8 games previous. 7 or more receptions in 4 of those 8 games. He had double digits in all 8 of those games. So that ended a 8-game double-digit point streak last week. 9 or more targets in 6 of his last 9 games. 5 of his highest 8-point totals on DK have came in home games, including the 3 highest. The one thing the Rams have not done all year is cover wide receivers. Metcalf and Lockett torched them their first matchup. And if Lockett is still a little banged up, it could just mean more targets to Metcalf. More likely he does more damage. I love Metcalf, 6,700, stacking with Geno versus the Rams.
Yeah, I like the stack there. Mine is probably the most predictable pick that I have almost every week. We're going with Garrett Wilson, 5,800. No, he did not give us a bunch of points against Seattle. Disappointing showing. But again, 11 targets. Now they resulted in only 18 yards, which is scary. But I'm not going to put that on Garrett Wilson. I've got a feeling it's probably going to be, if you go back and watch the tape, it's going to be a quarterback issue. Obviously, listen, Mike White has kind of been the guy that we think about with Garrett Wilson. It's like, if Mike White's out there, they're good. He's out. It's Joe Flacco. People should remember, though, that Cleveland game, which was kind of the game that was like, oh, shit, is Garrett Wilson really good? Joe Flacco was the quarterback when he scored 33 points on 14 targets. And in week 1, first game he ever played in the NFL with Flacco, 8 targets, 52 yards. Joe Flacco is not afraid to look Garrett Wilson's way. And what I really love about this is, for one, he's just getting those targets no matter who's the quarterback. But 19 deep targets over the last 5 games. Miami is a team that loves to play cover 3. They love to just have that one deep safety. They give up nearly 30 yards per deep completion. So this is a defense that you can attack going deep. Garrett Wilson can make you pay when that happens. And Joe Flacco is going to be looking his way. So as with pretty much every week, regardless of who their quarterback is, if Garrett Wilson is under 6,000, he's going in some of my lineups.
Yeah, we're making that a rule next year because you know that I swapped it, right? And I ended up moving Garrett Wilson into my median flex. And it was honestly just because he's been our guy all year, right? Like I got to tip my cap to Wilson, who has been so much better than I thought he was pre-draft. And then he's also been really good. He's averaged 15 points per game his last 9 games on DK, 3 games of 26 plus points, and averaged 11 targets in games started by Joe Flacco. So
half of his touchdowns on the season are with Joe Flacco in 2 games. So yeah.
Do we need to think about Corey Davis too? He's 3,500.
I think you do.
Okay, because you're talking about all those air yards, and I just think there's a good chance that Corey Davis can still burn somebody. So anyway, sorry. My bargain tier receiver is Jahan Dotson. Is this another one we share?
Yes, we do share this one.
All right, so this is our guy again. We've been on him for a few weeks. He saw 7 targets, over 110 air yards, and scored 6.5 points last week, but he got winced. That's where we made a mistake, Joe. We did not account for how bad Carson Wentz was, and that kind of ended, playing 80. Well, it is what it is. He still led the team though as a wide receiver in targets, receptions. He has a snap share of now 80% or more in 4 straight games. He's seen 31 targets over those 4, at least 6 in each of those games. 18 receptions in that time, 4 more in 3 or 4 of them. And after seeing multiple red zone targets and 2 straight, he did not see one last week. But again, he got winced. So that's not his fault, Joe. Don't blame it against Dotson. He scored 13.3 points or more in 6 of his last 8. Cowboys have given up 10 touchdowns in just their last 5 games to wide receivers. I love Dotson versus Dallas. You could talk me into, honestly, Curtis Samuel. You could talk me into probably Terry McLaurin, but I just like Dotson at his value with the ability to just go bananas.
Yeah, to me, it's just he has become a guy now where he's seeing early in the year, when I rolled the dice on him against, Tennessee, the whole thought process was he doesn't need a lot of targets to be productive in this game. He just needs a couple of deep shots. Now, he's seeing the ball consistently. So give me that. Obviously there is some risk because we're dealing with a quarterback who's making his first start in the NFL against a good defense. But I mean, if you're Washington, you'd as Ron.
Well, how
Rivera,
long is it going to be a good defense though? Because Dallas could be in a situation where if Philly gets up big,
That's
correct?
true. And I would keep in mind too that defense hasn't looked quite as good down the stretch. Because
That's
again,
right.
outside of Diggs, those corners are really beat up. It's not the guys they started the season with. And also, if you're Washington, as Ron Rivera sadly learned last week, they have nothing to play for this week. They are eliminated. So you just want to see what Sam Howell can do. He's going to be chucking the ball around because they're going to be losing too. So I expect Dotson to see at least 7 targets. And I mean, guys scored touchdowns in 3 of his last 4 games. So at 4,500, yeah, I'll absolutely take a piece of that.
Yeah, I think I officially have to apologize. I thought they reached on him in the draft because I thought there was a pretty big drop off.
I thought they did too.
And from
He
what I've
looks
seen
pretty
from
good.
him, this guy's dangerous. Like this guy's really dangerous. But going into last week, he had 7 touchdowns on 50 targets. That's ridiculous.
Much like the Jets, you just look around and you go, get this team a quarterback. Now, obviously, I hope they fail as a Giants fan, but man, if you just install an average quarterback in either of those offenses, those teams could take off.
Very talented. All right, tight ends, expensive tier. I cheated. I took George Kittle, 6,000 Arizona.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I had to do it. I haven't gone very expensive at running back or receiver, so I'm like, I'm going to spend here 22.4 over his last 3, at least 12.3 points per game in each of those games, 5 receiving touchdowns in that span. Niners need to win the game. They're now control their own destiny for the 2 seed. Cardinals allow 6 receptions, 65 yards to tight ends, 0.62 touchdowns per game. They're 31st on DK. They're really bad versus tight ends. First game, he had 6 targets, 4 receptions, 84 yards, and 2 touchdowns versus his D. Joe told you like Purdy. I really like, again, the Purdy Kittle stack. I think that they kind of undervalued that. I mean, you can get these 2 guys for basically under 12K. That's a pretty good deal there. Give me Kittle's my expensive tier tight end.
Yeah, much like the Jamar Chase one, I think this is the right top tier guy. He's awesome. He's George Kittle. He's facing a defense that we want to target every single week. The only reason he's not my pick is because you covered him, and there is someone between the mid-tier and Kittle that I do really like, and that is Dallas Goedert. The Giants, again, I think we have really bad linebackers. Xavier McKinney did come back, so our starting safeties will probably both be out there to start the game. But again, who knows how long that'll happen. And as TJ Hawkinson proved quite thoroughly 2 weeks ago, if you're a good tight end, you can go off against my New York Giants. They gave up over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns to him. We saw the Cowboys. I think Schultz did score both those touchdowns. He scored 2. The Ravens, their tight ends combined for 11 for 157 back in week 6. So when the Giants face a plus tight end, bad things happen. Dallas Goedert, 12.2 points per game on DK this season. I mean, he's another guy where, very much like Kittle, if he was just in an offense that wasn't so loaded with other playmakers, you'd realize just how good this guy is. I mean, I think last year he was first in yards per route run among tight ends, so he's really good. Again, my thing with this Eagles-Giants matchup is pick 1 or 2 Eagles that you think are the best bets and go with them, because at least 2 of them are having big games. It's guaranteed. It would have happened if the Giants were healthy or if the Giants had to play everyone. The fact that they don't and the Eagles still need to make sure they win just guarantees it. Multiple guys, awesome games. And Dallas Goedert's at 4,900, he's the cheap option that you can roll with. Like, put him in a flex. Do a Kittle Goedert flex. I'd feel great about it.
And it does look like Minshew again, right?
It sounds like it probably will be. I haven't seen anything definite yet.
So again, that to me, to your point, makes it even more appealing because Goddard's biggest game ever in daily fantasy or fantasy football was with Gardner Minshew at QB. So not a bad deal. All right, median tier. Tyler Higbee, 4,400 at Seattle. The only team worse than Arizona is Seattle versus tight end. So yeah, give me a tight end versus them too. He's seen 23 targets in the 3 full Baker starts, 16 receptions, 3 touchdowns, over 47 points in that span. I have a feeling the Rams really want to win this game because why do they want to help the Seahawks? They don't have this draft pick. Fuck it. Like, I mean, it looks like the way that the coaching staff has been coaching McVay that they're kind of taking pride in. They've had some kitchen sink games the last couple of weeks. And Seattle gives up 14.67 yards per reception to tight ends, which is really unbelievable when you look at how hard it is to have a tight end in your fantasy lineup that gets 40 yards receiving. And this team gives up 14 yards every reception to them. They're also giving almost 5 receptions a game. Give me Tyler Higbee, 4,400 at Seattle, my median tier tight end.
Yeah, no surprise here. I am 100% co-signing this one because, Seattle is the worst against tight ends. We always want to play tight ends facing them. Higbee, again, in his one game against Seattle this year, not very productive, 3.4 points. But keep in mind, that was with John Wolford at quarterback in a game where Wolford only threw 26 passes. 2 of them were interceptions, so he was also giving the ball away. So Baker Mayfield, whatever you want to say about him, pretty clear upgrade there. And like you said, has not been shy about ever since I said Wolford.
You sound like me, Joe. You gonna be okay?
Oh my gosh. This is what happens when we get to the end of the season. But he's been unafraid to target Higbee. This is as good of a matchup as you can get for a tight end. So throw Higbee into the lineups without any concern. I mean, I guess obviously this isn't the most functional offense week in, week out, but against Seattle, I won't guarantee anyone else on this team, although I do like the Akers pick. I won't guarantee any of the wide receivers, but Tyler Higbee should have a good game.
And this is an ultimate revenge team. You got McVay. The Rams don't have their pick. Baker is playing for his
future. Right. And
Akers.
They're kind of playing for the rest of us outside. Like, I kind of want to see Seattle maybe make the playoffs because I do like Geno. But as far as the Sunday night drama goes,
I would much rather.
The Rams are playing for everyone in that we kind of want Dan Campbell trying to do Aaron Rodgers' knees. Like, let's see it happen. So,
comes down to that. I would bet the house on Rodgers, but
100%.
It's the Lions or Packers. As a Falcons fan, I've seen this movie.
Yeah, it's winter in Lambeau, and it's the Lions. So Godspeed to them.
All right, my bargain tier: Trey McBride, 3,300 at San Fran. This is all about Blau last week. I don't necessarily think McBride unleashed anything. The Falcons are terrible versus tight ends. The Niners are one of the best defenses in the league against tight ends. But he did see 10 targets, caught 7 receptions, 95% snap share, ran a route on 83% of those snaps, 25% target share. He does that again, even on a bad matchup. I like it. I expect him to see a good bit of targets. I think the Niners are going to be up in this game. Positive game script for him. Blau's throwing it a bunch. He threw it 40 times last week for the Falcons. Again, he got 10 targets. That happens again. I'll take my chances with McBride at 3,300. He's my bargain tier tight end.
I like that. I feel like we're kind of overdue for some good McBride stuff because, I mean, coming into that last year's draft,
I was way too high on
guy. Yeah. So, I mean, again, tight ends often take a while, as we've seen with Evan Ingram, who's finally a good tight end. It only took leaving the Giants.
He needed a warmer client, Joe.
He did. Yeah, that was it. The cold made him drop all those passes. I'm going. It's fair. I'm going to go Tyler Conklin, 3,600. Coming off a nice rebound game because he is, after a strong start to the season, been pretty all over the place, but 6 receptions on 6 targets for 80 yards against who would have thunk Seattle last week. Amazing. But what I love about this is when he had that super strong start to the year, 3 straight double-digit games on DK or any PPR format. Joe Flacco, first 2 games, starting quarterback, targeted him 16 times. So the fact that Flacco's in, to me, that raises Conklin here. And also Miami, not a team that I think we've been super vocal about targeting with tight ends, but really bad against tight ends. 31st in receptions allowed and tied for second to last, having given up 10 touchdowns to tight ends this season. So this Miami team, not good at stopping tight ends. Joe Flacco has already shown from the start of the season he loves to target Tyler Conklin. So at 3,600, he's definitely going in a number of my lineups.
This is like the greatest hits on week 18, Joe. It's a bunch of guys.
This is what we got, especially at tight end. I love it that we're just like, no, this team sucks.
I'm going with my guys.
We're all in, baby.
Yep, exactly. Flex, expensive tier. Speaking of our guys, Stephon Diggs, 7,900 versus New England. I think he's a value at this price. I think he's the best receiver and the best passing offense in football, and they need to win this game. And he's only 7,900. I think he might be low owned. These last 3 games have been duds, 10 points or less. That obviously will get people off your scent a little bit. First game, though, versus Pats, he saw 9 targets, 7 receptions, 92 yards, a touchdown. He's only cracked 20 points twice in his last 6. That's not good. But one again was versus New England. So he's overdue, Joe. We know we love the overdue guy. Biggest game of the year with a potential 1 seed on line. I think they're going to try to go to him early and often. He's their best player. And again, just a reminder, this Pats secondary, they're good, but it's not like all-time good. Jefferson, 9 receptions, 139 yards, a touchdown. Garrett Wilson, 6 for 115. Allen Lazard, 6 for 115. T. Higgins, 8 for 128. No offense to those guys. Other than Jefferson, I think Diggs is a much better receiver than Wilson, Lazard, or Higgins. And I think Allen is going to start playing his best football. He really got hot during the playoffs. He looks like he's starting to do that again. I love Diggs 7,900 this week. I think he torches New England. Really, other than that snowstorm or windstorm or whatever that game was, they have been getting beat down by this friggin' Buffalo team. I mean, they have owned the New England defense lately. I think that continues. Give me Diggs 7,900 as my expensive tier flex.
I like that. I'm going to go a little bit cheaper here. I'm going with Chris Olave. I mean, you talked about how Garrett Wilson was kind of the guy who was way better than you thought. Chris Olave is that guy for me. He was kind of, by the end of everything, I was like, I think he's my number 5 receiver in this draft class, which didn't mean I hated him or anything. But, I just didn't think he didn't do a whole lot after the catch in college. Well, it turns out you don't have to do a whole lot after the catch if you just catch deep bombs. Chris Olave has been adept at going deep this year. He is 5th in the league in deep targets. Which, again, I love that because he catches a 150-yard touchdown and we're good to go. Obviously, the last month or so, not quite as awesome as when he had that, I think it was a 7-week stretch where he hit double digits consecutively. Last 2 weeks against Atlanta and Philly, only 8 points. But again, this is a guy who really, he set that floor for a rookie where he's at least getting close to 10 points every week. Like, we're not going to see the little snowflake telling us that he went totally cold on us. And again, I mean, against Philly, I don't know what happened in that Atlanta game. Against Philly, though, that's the best outside corner combo in the NFL. Carolina does not have the best outside corner combo in the NFL, especially because all of their cornerbacks are hurt. You may have noticed that without J.C. Horn, things got a little rough when you had Mike Evans running down the field. So Chris Olave, not the same physical profile as Evans, but a very similar ability to beat people deep. Carolina also not very good at pressuring, which, again, explains why once their corners went out, everything fell apart. Their defensive line ranks 23rd in pass rush grade on PFF. The Saints are among the top half of the league in pass blocking efficiency per PFF. So I don't expect a ton of pressure on Andy Dalton. And again, yards per route run. It's not only Olave, there is another Saints receiver who are in the top 10 at wide receiver in yards per route run. I will get to that other guy in a little bit, but yeah, Olave, 29.4% threat rate from a clean pocket. I'm not entirely sure what that means because this article on PFF does not explain it, but it sounds good to me. So again, this is a guy who goes deep. He goes deep often. He's against a defense that is without their starting corners and does not get pressure on the quarterback. So again, if Andy Dalton had shown anything consistent over the last 2 months, he would have been my low tier QB. As is Chris Olave and receiver to be named later. I think you want to throw at least one of these guys in your lineups because the opportunity is there.
Damn, no spoilers, Joe, huh?
No spoilers, because this was a guy that I was barely aware of.
The bad thing is I know who you're talking about, but I can't think of his last name.
I could
God
not have
bless
named him 3 weeks
yeah,
ago, or
right?
even probably 2 weeks ago. So,
All right, so my mid-tier we talked about was Garrett Wilson. No need to go back over that. We both like him. That's usually a good thing. Who's your mid-tier flex, Joe?
my mid-tier flex. Shoot, I need to pull it up. I kind of forgot here.
It's
Oh,
my other boy.
it's you said you didn't like him that much this week, but I'm here to just keep riding. I'm all in on rookie wide receivers, as we're seeing here, especially in
Pretty good class, though.
Yeah, it is a good class, and especially in the NFC South. Your guy Drake London, 4,900 against Tampa Bay. Listen, again, didn't totally happen last week. Gave us 9.7 against Arizona. But fourth straight game with at least 5 receptions, at least 8 targets. He is a target monster in this offense. Unsurprising because, as you've detailed before, now that we lost our guy Pitts at tight end, everyone else besides London is 5'9". So no surprise. Looking for Drake London.
It's like the Munchkins, dude.
Yeah. And again, Tampa Bay probably not playing the starters in the second half of this game. So
I don't know. Tom Brady does like sticking it to Atlanta.
Well, he's going to put up 3 touchdowns in the first quarter or something.
Sure.
And then you guys will win 23-21.
No, I was going to say I was going to be cheering until you said the 23-21, which that's probably right.
Because that's inevitably what happens.
2 Drake London fourth quarter touchdown.
There you go. That's what I'm calling for here. Drake London, again, he's going to see 8 or more targets. It's just the question of how productive he'll be with those targets. Against backup corners, I expect him to be pretty productive. So I like him at 4,900.
And I want to know what the longest streak is for a quarterback. I think he's thrown it at least 20 times in his first 2 starts that Ritter has not gotten a touchdown. He should have had one last week. That Patterson was a catch.
It's got to happen.
I'm with you there. All right, my bargain tier flex is a straight up just throwing darts, people. It's week 18. Let's have some fun. Alexander Madison, 5,100 at Chicago. I just had a feeling this gets ugly early. Chicago sucks. Phillies ain't playing. They're throwing up the flag. They're like, look, we got a chance to get the number 1 pick because the Texans will fuck some stuff up. So they're thinking we're just going to take a L here and see what happens in the Texans-Colts game. He saw 9 touches last week in a blowout loss to Green Bay. Let's see maybe that it gets flipped and they're in a blowout win. I think you can see even more. Bears 31st in points allowed to backs on DK. And in case you need a reminding of what the Chicago Bears run defense is right now, last week, DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, 33 carries, 222 yards, 2 scores. The week before that, another really dynamic duo everyone fears, James Cook and Devin Singletary, 23 carries, 205 yards, 2 scores. I think Madison could end up going over 100 yards, score twice. There's a lot of opportunities in a game that I think Minnesota's going to win easily. And they're still technically playing for something. Give me Madison 5,100 at Chicago bargain tier flex.
I really like that play because, I mean, Minnesota's in a similar situation to the Eagles where they do still need to win, although they need to bank on other teams losing. But the 49ers play after them, so they will be very motivated to try to win this game. Chicago, before they started resting guys, were already banged up on defense, had already traded away some of their best players. My big reason for not targeting Minnesota guys the way I have Eagles is largely price point because Jefferson's over 9,000.
Cook's expensive.
Not crazy expensive, but he's in the 7,000s.
But he's one of the guys I really worry about how much.
Yeah, how much play he gets because I don't expect him to have a lot of resistance in this game. But yeah, that's exactly why Madison is a great play. I love that one. The receiver to be named later is Rashid Shaheed, 4,200 for the Saints against the Carolina Panthers. Last 4 weeks, averaging just north of 13 points per game on DK. 3 of the 4, he has hit double digits. Early on this year, I think, Olave, I would like throw out the stat that he was like first in air yards and stuff on his team. He's dropped to 4th, and a lot of that is that Shaheed has given them that second guy who can run deep. Now, Player Profiler has him at 2.95 yards per route run, but PFF has apparently different numbers because they have him at 3.31 yards per route run. So according to their numbers, the only guys averaging more yards per route than Rashid Shaheed this season are Tyreek Hill and AJ Brown.
Those guys are okay.
So yeah, that's some company right there. So yeah, and again, Carolina not pressuring the passer, 25th in DVOA against deep passes this season. Working with the backup corners now. We saw what Mike Evans could do. So I mean, even if you split Mike Evans' stat line just between Olave and Rashid, we'd have 2 great games because that's how bad it was. So yeah, I would say try and get at least one of these guys in your lineup. Shaheed's easy to get in your lineup at this price point. So yeah, I think like you said, Madison gives you some great options to go cheap at running back. I think we've given between Dotson and Shaheed and London. That's 3 receivers under 5K who I all really like. So yeah, there's some really good options to go cheap here and then spend elsewhere. Again, very much try to get Kittle in your lineup because good Lord.
6 targets, 4 receptions, 84 yards, 2 touchdowns in game 1. That was with Jimmy, right?
I believe so, right? Because
I think that's right.
If it was before the Raiders game and after week 2 or 3, then it has to be.
All right. Before we move on to the defense, I just want to say I'm very disappointed in both of us, Joe, about you brought it up, Mike Evans. What did we say? 3 times in the last 3-4 episodes?
He's due. He's going to have the explosive game.
You picked him that 1 week. Did you go back to the well? No. Did I
pick up
the slack and go back? No. I was so mad.
Brutal.
I was so fucking mad. I'm like, you said it 3 times. You're like, he's going to have a big game. He always does. And then there it was. Footy scored 50 points. I hate you, Mike. It was one of those deals that if you have him in a lineup, you're almost guaranteed to cash. Seriously.
Yeah, no,
it's that
100%.
much higher than everybody else. It's almost a guarantee.
Guaranteed to cash. You won your championship game.
Yeah.
All the good things happen to you.
Anyway, I'm disappointed in myself. All right. The defenses. What a mess. Give me Seattle, 3,300 versus the Rams. For all the things that I said about the Rams players, I got Akers, I got Higbee. I know. It's also the Rams. It's Baker Mayfield going to Seattle. I could see it getting ugly the other way. Because again, the 12th man, it's a real thing. The median, give me the Colts versus Houston. You can give me Houston versus the Colts. I don't care. The Colts, believe it or not, I think we're a little cheaper. I like the Colts versus Houston. I think that this is a game of who wants to win less. At least the Colts, though, do not have their draft pick. So to me, that makes it a little bit more likely that Houston ends up potentially getting this victory.
Wait. The Colts do have their draft pick, don't they?
Do they have it this year?
I think they do, right?
Okay.
They didn't trade. They didn't trade a first for Matt Ryan. I don't remember.
No. They traded a 3rd round. I thought that they had traded one.
I think
there was 2 teams up there.
I think I still agree with the point because the Texans could lose the number 1 pick if they win. So they are more motivated to lose. But
it'd be the most Jets thing ever.
It would be.
Because the Jets did that. All right, and then my bargain too, while you look that up, because I know you will. The Denver Broncos, 2,500 versus the Chargers. I think the Chargers are going to find out very quickly they don't need this game. That's why I don't have any Chargers in my lineup. And if they don't need it, why do they care? I mean, honestly, the Broncos defense has not been terrible. If I'm going against Charger backups, I could see pick sixes. I could see whatever. And Denver is definitely a team I know that does not have their draft pick. So again, they're also in F it, why not mode. So give me the Broncos 2,500 as my bargain tier defense.
So the Colts do have their own pick. They're currently picking 5th.
Damn it, that hurts my Falcons if we want to take a quarterback case.
Although if they win, the only team that they would drop behind is Detroit by way of the Rams. So there's only one spot,
tie, right?
Yeah, because of the tie. So at worst, they would only drop down 1 spot if they win. Although the same is obviously true for Houston, but dropping from 5 to 6, not quite as dramatic as dropping from 1 to 2. I think, truly the expensive tier is you can't go wrong with, the Niners against Arizona, the Eagles.
We would have thought that last week with the Niners versus the Raiders, in fairness.
That's true. And then, we have Dallas against, rookie QB. So all those seem great. If you have the money, which maybe you do, because again, I think we gave some really enticing lower tier guys.
We're saving our money for the playoffs. That's how it works,
so,
right?
Yeah.
We can roll it over.
So if you have the money at the end, hey, absolutely take your pick of those top 3, or hey, maybe even the Bills. They should be super motivated. and New England is largely a mess on offense. But like you, I'm going to say you don't need us to tell you about those. Like, hey, they're good. Play them if you have it. I'm going to go down to the Vikings, a defense that I don't even think is good. They have negative points 2 of the last 4 weeks. Their best game over the last 4 weeks was against the Giants. They scored 9. Giants averaged 6.7 yards per play in that game. It was pretty much, unless the Giants turned it over, they were marching down the field. But hey, who are the Vikings playing? They're playing Nathan Peterman.
There we go.
So that's an automatic entry into a number of my lineups, especially at under $3,000. So Vikings 2,900. I have a sneaking suspicion that the Texans will somehow win this game and end up losing the number 1 pick. In part because I just have a rule of fade Jeff Saturday and also fade Sam Ehlinger, because what a combination. So the Texans 2,700. Again, not a defense I think is especially good, but one that I will say
they're frisky.
Has been playing reasonable. I mean, they have at least 5 points in every game since week 12. That included games against Miami and Dallas and Kansas City. So this is not a defense playing terrible right now. And they're up against an offense that I would legitimately say, I mean, obviously there's competition this week with like Nathan Peterman starting for the Bears. But over the course of the season, I think the Colts are probably the worst offense in the NFL. And when you're starting Sam Ehlinger and Jonathan Taylor's not suiting up, I feel even stronger about that. And dropping just slightly down. This defense has let me down a bit over the last month, but I'm going to go with the Jets 2,600. Obviously, we're not going to be seeing Tua in this game for Miami. The Jets not playing for the win, but are not playing to make the playoffs, but are playing to knock out Miami earlier in the day than them waiting to see if the Patriots aren't going to beat the Bills. So yeah, Miami's a real shot if the Jets don't beat them. Again, sneaking suspicion, maybe the Jets pull it off here. This is again a very reasonable defense despite having some struggles down the stretch here. And really, it's not like they're giving up a ton of points. They've only given up 23 points or less the last 4 weeks. They just haven't been able to get huge sack numbers in a couple of those games. They only have 1 turnover forced in that time span. So those are things that generally, if you play solid defense, the turnovers come. I think that could happen this week. Again, it's Robert Salah knows what he's doing with the defense. Sauce Gardner is an all-pro as a rookie. This defense is good, and yeah, this Miami team has been in flux down the stretch here on offense. So at 2,600, I think they're very much worth the play.
I like all those. I mean, again, I think defense, you can't go wrong this week. You really can't go wrong with any pick. I mean, there's not too many crazy ones unless you're planning on starting somebody that, again, their team has
right. Don't start the Bears defense because why would you? But
Cole Kmet or any other Bears
don't start
receiver.
Nathan Peterman. Actually, there's your one. That one, there's no doubt it's a bad play. Don't do it. Stay away from Nathan Peterman, but otherwise go wild.
The Daily Fix Show, going out on limbs since 2019. Don't go with Nathan Peterman. All right, so that gets us through Week 18 picks. Again, and this is good news for us. So we are the Daily Fix podcast show, obviously, on the Fantasy and Frames podcast network. So all of our pods and stuff will actually go under that window, or excuse me, umbrella. Yeah. Also go to the website. They're going to do, Jorge was showing it this earlier. It's going to be a website with all of our picks. You've seen the graphics that we'll share on Twitter and stuff. It'll have a link to the video to this in YouTube, as well as actually where the podcast is. So a lot of easy ways to check it out. And it's going to be a lot of exciting things coming to Fantasy and Frames next year where they're moving to more digital, which for people like me and Joe who like to run our mouth and not write so much, that's really good. People who like to elegantly write, it's probably not as good. But anyway, it's good stuff for, honestly, a site that we've been here for a year. Some of the smartest guys in the business, to listen to like Nate and Jorge and those guys talk about IDP, I'm just like, holy shit. I couldn't imagine having to know that many players' names. It's ridiculous. But seriously, a lot of good stuff. The chasing waiver wire ads. There's just a lot of cool stuff.
There's a mountain of things that you can check out.
So much good stuff.
It's legitimately can be a one-stop shop. Obviously, I think you should always branch out, check out different things, but whatever you're looking for, it's there.
You don't want to listen to the lamestream media too much, Joe. If you get your news from all one source.
Right, exactly. Throw in a little PFF there, a little outsiders here. If you have to, maybe use ESPN. But anything like you said, Dynasty, IDP, we've got the DFS. Like, it's all there, whatever you need.
Great stuff. So we're excited. It's all going to be under the Fantasy and Frames umbrella. So each show is a show. So we're the Daily Fix podcast. Now we're the Daily Fix show. So on Fantasy and Frames. But again, good thing. We're excited. We will be here again. Remember, we're going to be here wild card weekend, divisional weekend, conference championship, Super Bowl, and we do have guests lined up. Joe Pepe's coming back, Detroit Beastie, and then again, All Frames Super Bowl Sunday episode. So anyway, I know I took way too long closing this, but I'm sorry when I get rambling, guys.
We're excited.
I am excited. But for Joe the Brain, Matt, Keith Flynn, I gotta get me a nickname. This has been the Daily Fix Show on the Fantasy and Frames Podcast Network. We'll see you guys soon.